What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another video here at Red Dirt Reptiles. For those of you who don't know, I'm Corey, and for those of you returning, welcome back. So today I'm going to cover a couple questions and answers. The other day I was giving some comments on one of my videos, and I answered the gentleman, but I thought, why not make a video and kind of go a little more in depth. So Darryl Baker, this is for you, man, and for anybody else who might want to listen. It says, hey man, I have a baby Asian water monitor that I myself purchased from Underground Reptiles. Anyway, my question for you is that right now he or she is shedding. Is there anything that I can do to help him or her shed the skin? Also, do you have any taming tips on taming? Mine has never tried to bite me at all yet, so that's a relief. It's not captive bred. I was told it was a wild caught, one from the store I purchased it from. Anyway, it seems to be warming up to me because I've been picking it up since I got it, which was on New Year's Day, and so far it seems to be doing fine, just a little flighty. Will that change as it gets bigger? Thanks in advance. So that's kind of broken down into a couple questions, so we're going to tackle one at a time. The first one, man, is shedding. For me, I hear a lot of people that, in my opinion, really don't know nothing about these guys telling you to avoid helping shed. While true in maybe some species, true or not, I don't know. The monitors are definitely not one that I would say is one that is not true. Absolutely help them. What is the difference between me pulling off a piece of loose shed or flaked off shed and peeling a whole big piece off? What's the difference between that and them rubbing up against a tree or a rock or anything that they do in the wild? Absolutely nothing. In fact, these guys are taken care of way more here and in much more calm environments than they would be out in the wild, so why not help them? Just like I noticed that if I reach underneath mine when they're in shed and scratch real hard, they love that. You know what I mean? So what's the difference of me scratching and it flaking off rather than rubbing up again underneath the tree? Absolutely nothing. So in my opinion, go for it. Absolutely help shed. Don't be forceful with it. If you have to force it, don't be forceful with it. Let it come off a little bit on its own. I personally like to soak on my monitors and let them dry, and what's left, if it's coming off, help them shed. Or if even better, after they soak for a little bit in the tub, I help them shed because it comes off just that much easier. Again, I may get some flack on this, but man, there are a lot of people out there, a lot of us keepers that have done this for a while now and really understand our animals and understand that we're really not hurting them whatsoever. If you have any advice or comments contrary to what I'm saying, please feel free to leave them in the comments or drop me a message. You can find us on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. So if I'm saying something wrong and you got some other proof or other info to back it up with, please have info to back it up with, because I'm going on firsthand experience. Then man, I would appreciate it. The next one is for taming. I've said it a bunch in my last video, or in some of my older videos. Taming is a timely process. It is not something that is done overnight, unless you are getting an animal that is already used to being handled most of the time. And even then, in your first month, you may not have much interaction. Or the first day, you may have solid interaction. It all depends on the animal. Each one of these guys are completely different. It all depends on their mindset when they get in, and maybe even what kind of stress levels they were put in during transition to get to you. Perfect example, I have a female that, made a long trip, and right now she's been here 4 weeks, still wants nothing to do with this. She'll come out of the enclosure and kind of let me mess with her that way when she's out of the enclosure if I let her out. But if she doesn't come out, then there's no going in to get her. She's not being touched. On the other hand, I just received a 5.5-foot male yesterday who already today I've had major strides in interaction with him. I mean, he's come up, I've gotten to rub on him and pet all over him. He's been absolutely a doll. So again, it all kind of depends on, what the parameters were around shipping to get to you. I'd say that's step number one. Step number two is in how you build your trust and bond with these guys. It takes time. You can't be forceful with it. You can't force them to do it on your time frame. It has to be on their time frame. And if you don't give it to them on their time frame, you're going to break whatever trust might have been there, or break the possibility to earn trust at all, and you're just going to have an aggressive animal for the rest of forever. So doing your due diligence and research into what animal you have and knowing what to expect once you get it is a major heads up for you guys. So if you'll take the time to do some research, and man, when I say take the time, I put in years of research into all this before I ever even got my first one. And I'm still learning tons day by day. You know what I mean? I happen to be friends with some of the best people out there who have been able and willing to both give me advice. But that's not come from nothing. You got to show people that you want the advice, which this gentleman did for reaching out for me. And so again, Darryl, thank you. You know, one of the other things that was mentioned was where he got it from. Man, I myself am not going to sit here and say anything bad about any place that sells anything, because I don't know them personally, so I can't really say yay or nay. I personally have never dealt with underground, or many other people for that matter. I've been kind of doing this on my own, or you know, going through word of mouth friends and such like that. However, I will say there's a big difference between wild caught and CBB, only in mentality right off the bat. Most wild caughts can be tamed out just as easily depending on species. If we're talking Salvatore, oh, of course. I mean, wild caught or CBB means no difference. You're really going to have probably a puppy dog tame animal by the end if you're doing it right. Again, if you're doing it right, which means having everything dialed in, your techniques on top of husbandry. So, but there are some species out there that no matter what you do, wild or not, you know, you're just not going to get to tame down. They're just naturally defensive and aggressive. Gold tegus are like that. Niles, even tame Niles, are still relatively defensive in posture. So it's all species specific, in my opinion. And very much so are some species, whether CBB or not, harder to tame. And even again in the subvert of that, every animal in every species is different. So I may have a Asian water monitor that is a pain in the rear to tame, and I might have a Nile monitor that just became friends with me like that, and it's been, you know, a non-stop process. So it all depends on the animal's mentality, and it also all depends on how you go about it, your techniques with husbandry and your techniques with taming and working with these guys. In my opinion, watching some of the old nerd water monitor taming and socialization videos is a great idea. You know, I've heard mixed reviews on that place. I personally love them. I love the information that's being given out. I don't know Kevin personally. I would love to. Seems like a real great guy. I love listening to his informational videos. To be honest with you, shout out to you, Kevin Curley, because I have used every one of your monitor taming and socialization techniques to date over the last couple of years, and they've worked out wonderfully. So in my opinion, that's the guy to go listen to, because the dude knows what he's talking about. If you go in and listen to his video that really touches base on thread building techniques, tiny little bitty steps, you know, to an overall big picture, man, if you can have the patience and use the process, it works wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. You know, it's all about, and these guys, for me, from what I've noticed in my own hands-on experience and my research and, you know, watching other people, you get out of these guys what you put in. You know, if you're looking to have an A+ animal that you can take out and play with on a daily basis, be very, very specific about what species you end up in. And just the same, make sure that you're willing to do the daily work diligently. Because if you get these animals and they get big and you go, oh man, I didn't think about that, or you get these animals and you leave them alone, you're asking for bad news. These guys are animals that are just as intelligent as we are, and so they understand what bad interactions are, and they understand what bad vibes are, and bad habitat, bad surroundings. So if you put them in a negative space, then they will act in a negative way. If you put them in a positive space, they are going to act in a positive way. Again, it's all about paying attention. With these guys, I've noticed the baby minute details tell everything. Body posturing, body language, eye dilation, posturing of the body itself, the way their tails curl, or not toes, tails curl, the way their necks kink when you look. I mean, there's all kinds of telltale signs that these guys will give you, guys, girls, whatever, the you know, monitors in general will give you. And so it's up to you on whether or not you're able to read them. And by being able to read them, you're able to really have a wonderful relationship with your animal. You know, I think Tom Crutchfield said it best. It's when you lose your fear of the animal and the animal loses its fear of you that you have an amazing bond. Luckily, I've been able to experience that a couple of times. I have one here at my house currently right now, a 12-month-old female Java low-cal Asian water monitor that I have that type of relationship with. There's no fear absolutely of either, you know, for her of me and me of her. And because of that, we have a wonderful bond. You know, the new one that I just told you I got in yesterday, shout out to Mr. Anthony Sainz. You know, he's used to being handled, and he came over here in a very non-stressful flight and came into a very non-stressful household, into a, you know, identical environment almost that he came from as far as setup goes. I built almost an identical setup to to Anthony Sainz' setup that he came from. So he's flourishing, and just today, you know, and he hasn't even been here 24 hours, I'm already getting to pet on him and love on him and getting long tongue flicks and interaction, posturing, so absolutely great. But I've been reading body language since he's gotten here too, and it's paid dividends that I've had this species before, and then that I've got some interaction experience with them, you know, so I'm really able to kind of dial in where he's at and where I'm at and our fear for each other, which I have no fear of him. I'm a little nervous of him because he's 3 times the size as my last monitor of his species, but nonetheless, I love him, and I'm looking forward to continuing to work with him. So I just thought, again, I would touch on some of these questions. I think we just pretty much got done with it. Oh yes, Taming and Socialization. Okay, so one thing I said was to go watch Kevin McCurley's videos. Look, man, he talks a lot about how to work with them individually with your hands, and how to really pay attention to detail-oriented things when it comes to body language and how to get their trust. One thing that's not really brought up, because he keeps his in a different light than what I do, he keeps his on a much more clean surface, and I keep mine on natural cypress substrate, which is no difference, okay? I mean, some people prefer to keep them on PVC, which is what I believe Nerd keeps theirs on. Some people want to keep them on, a little bit of both, PVC, cypress, mulch, and wood, which is kind of the range that I've gone. And other people give them a full-on naturalistic, like, live habitat, it's like a bioactive habitat for these guys to live in, but it all kind of depends on where you want to go with it. I mean, to me, there's really no right way or wrong way to raise these guys, as long as they're healthy and your husbandry is dialed in. I mean, your heat and humidities, your diet, stuff like that, lighting, making sure the animals have got plenty of room to move, making sure they got plenty of time to come out and get enrichment, just due to the fact that that is a major part of these guys. So, if you're making all the basic requirements and you have an animal that's thriving, I can't fault you, and you can't fault me. Especially with a lot of this being still trial and error for most of us who, are into species that isn't much known about. There's tons of information out there on the Salvatore, so those are pretty easy to maintain, and if you don't know how to maintain one, there's tons of information out there. But then you can start getting into some of the rare species or the harder to get species, like what I've done, and there's not much info out there. So there's trial and error as to what goes on and what works. Again, luckily I've got like Sainz, and for those out there who've heard of Sim Container, I've made decent acquaintance with these guys, and I've gotten a lot of great advice from these guys. John and Alex from Sim Container and School Modded Concepts, shout out to y'all as well, just awesome people. And then my buddy Derek, Derek McKinley, he's given me a ton of advice as well. I can't thank these guys enough. It's because of these guys that I want to be as informational as I am today, and as educative about these animals as I am, and why I want the rest of the world to know just as much. I felt like I had to go digging for a lot of the information. I feel like I don't want people to have to do that. I want to try and help bridge that gap, so there's not oh man, I can't find this info out there. We go check this guy out, he'll give us the info I need. Now, that being said, I don't have all the info for all the species. I'm really only going to be covering the species that I invest in and deal with on a 9 times out of 10 basis. So if you have something you want me to cover, even if I don't have it, I may have knowledge about it as far as monitor-wise goes, so let me know. And if you decide that you need some info on something you want covered, hey, let me know and I'll shoot a video up about it. All right, man. Darryl, thank you again for the questions, and I hope I got them all answered for you. And for anybody else who's listening and watching, I hope I answered some questions for you all as well. If you have any more questions or would like any more information about anything that I own or that somebody else may be dealing with as far as species related go, drop a comment. And I have no problem responding. I tend to respond pretty fast. If not, hit the like and subscribe button if you are already subscribed, and let's keep going with these videos. Thanks, guys.